Hello. Today I'm taking a quick run through of the OnChartEvent function. Now this is a function that you can place in your indicators or expert advisors. It's an event handler. It handles events, as it suggests, that happen on the chart. And those include mouse events, keyboard events, and simply redrawing events on the chart. There are a series of these chart events which I'm showing on screen: the key down, mouse move, mouse wheel, object create, change, delete, click, object click, and so on. I'm going to go through each of these, not necessarily in order because some of them need a little bit of special handling, but I will go through each of them, show you what the values are that come through from the ID, the L param, the D param, and the S param, and how you can use them. So on screen I have the MetaTrader 5 editor, although this is common for MetaTrader 4 and MetaTrader 5. And I've created an expert advisor that I've called OnChartEvent. And this has no initialization, performs no trading. It simply sits on the screen and watches for on-chart events. And when I get an on-chart event, I print this message: event L param, D param, and S param. I'm putting the S param inside single quotation marks so that you can tell where the beginning and the end of that string are. And for the ID, I'm casting to an enum chart event and then using enum to string to actually print the event name rather than just the number. So when an on-chart event happens, this function is called, passed in a numeric ID. There is a long argument that's the L param, a double that's the D param, and a string that's the S param. Not all of these arguments are used each time. The S param could be an empty string, or the L param and the D param could be zeros. So they're not used for every event. But we'll go through each of the events that can be raised and show you how they work. Let me just compile that. And on my chart now, I'm going to drag that expert onto the chart. It has no inputs, so I say OK. The first thing we can see here is chart event, chart change, but we'll come back to that later. That's simply been triggered because I've done something to the chart. The first and simplest thing I want to cover is chart click. So let me clear that. And down here I'm just going to click on the chart, and you can see I now have an event, chart event underscore click. L param 94, D param 701, and S param is empty. So the string parameter is always going to be empty for just a chart click. The L param is the X coordinate where I click the chart, and the D param is the Y coordinate. Now Y coordinates are integers, but there are only two possible numeric arguments. One of them is long and the other is a double, so they're simply using the X coordinate as the long parameter and the Y coordinate as an integer value in the double here. I clicked that at 94701. Let me just click a couple more times. I'm going to click here, and I have an L param of 90, so that's the X. If I move the cursor to the right and click, I now have an L param of 362. Now the Y parameter counts from top to bottom, so if I click here again, I have a D param of 707, and if I move up a little, I'll get a smaller number, 662. So you can use that to detect where on the chart someone has just clicked. But you may also want to know if certain things on the chart have been clicked. So now I'll move on to the object click event. I'm going to insert an object. I'm going to insert a horizontal line on the chart. I'll insert it down near the bottom here. You can see as soon as I've done that, I have this chart event object drag. We'll get to that again in a moment, but for now, if I click on the chart here, I get the chart event click. If I now click on that line, I get chart event object click and chart event click. So I get both events happening. The L param is the same for both, and the D param is the same for both. For the object click though, I also get this S param, which is the name of that object on the screen. So I can use this to interrogate which object has been clicked, and with the X and Y, I might want to do something different depending if I want to click this line on the left or on the right or somewhere in the middle. So this lets you use the objects and detect exactly where they're clicked. But remember, this L param is the same as the chart event click L param. The X and Y coordinates are relative to the chart and not to the object itself. And now you saw the drag. If I click this and move this line up, I get object drag again. It comes up when you first create the object simply because by clicking on the chart to create the object, that's detected as a drag event. Other than that, the drag happens anytime an object is moved on the chart. Now the L param you'll see is 0, and so is the D param. So there's nothing in this that is telling you what happened with the object. Just the S param tells you which object has moved. You can of course just interrogate that object then and find out where it has moved to. So the chart event object drag simply tells you which object has been moved. And now we can look at one more object event. I just open up the properties and I'm going to change the color. Change it to yellow. And I now have chart event chart change and chart event object change. So the first thing that happens is the object change. Still L param and D param 0. S param now is the name of the object. But again, nothing in here to tell me what has changed. I have to interrogate the object and find the values of that object. Chart event chart change happens every time anything happens that adjusts the chart. So if I scroll the mouse, I'm getting chart event chart change. If I change the time frame, I get chart event chart change. Anything that changes what appears on the chart. And I got it in fact when I first loaded the expert. Now the next event that I'm going to look at is a little more complex, so I'll just clear this first. The event that I'm going to look at is the key press, or key down. There is no key press and there is no key up, there's only a key down. And what I'm going to do is just press the A key. First I click in the chart so it gets focus, press the A key, and you can see I have a chart event key down, L param 65, D param 1, S param 30. Cover the D param first. The D param shows the number of repeats of the key. So if you've got auto repeat turned on and you hold a key down, you get that key repeating. D param will show you how many times that key has repeated. I've never seen that be a number other than 1, and I see a lot of people report that it always shows up as 1. I believe that happens because the events are processed faster than the keys repeat. But if for some reason you have a slow computer and you can get a key repeating, I think you might find that this will be more than 1 if the key repeats faster than the events are processed. So now L param. I press the A key. 65 is not the ASCII code for A, it is the keyboard code for an A. Each key on the keyboard has a keyboard code and it is not the same as the ASCII code of that key. So even the function keys, the shift, the tab, the caps lock, they all have key codes. So this L param shows you the key code, and you can find, if you search on Google, there are mappings of these key codes to show you which key on the keyboard has been pressed, but don't assume that this is actually the ASCII code of that key. According to the help, S param is a bitmap that also shows the state of keys on the keyboard. Now I just pressed the A key. I'm going to press the S key now, which is right next to A. You can see I have a different L param. The S key is a completely different key code. Now I have an S param though, it is 31. I'm going to press the D key, which is next to the S key. Again, a completely different L param, but the S param now is 32. I'm finding that the S param is incrementing across the keyboard. It seems to be a count of the keys. I cannot find any useful information to help me decipher the S param. I know that if I press the A key, I get 30. If I press it again, I get 30. If I hold it down for a second, then I get 16414, which is a bitmap of 2 to the 14th power plus 30. And if I hold the S key, let me scroll to the bottom again. If I hold the S key, which you'll remember was 1 more than the A key, then I get a 16415. If I try to do something like Shift A, I get the key mapping for the Shift key, which is 16, and then the A key, but the S param is still 30. So it's not showing me that I'm holding the Shift key while I'm pressing the A. If I press the Control key, I get a 17, which is the keyboard code for the Control key, and an S param, which is 29, which seems to be the position or value of that key. If I press the right Control key, I'll get a different value. I still get 17, the keyboard code for a Control key, but now I get 285 for the position key. I really don't know how much use you can make of that. If I find some more documentation on the S param for keyboard, then I will let you know. But otherwise you might just need to run your own experiments with the keyboard. And you can always just look up tables online of the L params, which are the keyboard codes, to know which key has been pressed. If you wanted to process something like Shift A, as I said, I press Shift and then while I'm holding it I press A. I actually get 2 key down events, the 16 for the Shift and the 65 for the A. If you wanted to know that someone is pressing Shift A, then you could trap that there is a control and then the A. But what I can't trap is that the Shift may have been released before the A. So if I do that, I'll press Shift and release it and then press A. You can see the sequence is exactly the same. So I can't tell from this that the Shift key is being held down while the A key is being pressed. I'm just going to clear this again. There are 4 events that I'm not catching at the moment. So let me first insert an object. Insert object horizontal line. So I'm getting the object drag, but I'm not getting an event for the object creation. And if I press the delete key, I'm getting the key down for the delete key, but I'm not getting the object delete. That's because I need to set certain properties of the chart before I can detect those events. So let's go back to the code and we'll do that. Here in the code, I'm going to insert some statements in the onInit function. Chart set integer 0, which is chart number 0. Chart event object create false. That's the default. I'm going to set that to true. And I'm also going to set this chart event object delete to true. Now by setting those values, my chart will begin to report object create and object delete events. Remember, with this chart set integer, I can select a different chart, so it's possible to set this property on other charts. And also remember that if I'm running multiple indicators and an expert perhaps on the chart, you can only run one expert on one chart, all of those will now detect these object create and object delete events by setting this to true. Or if I ran something that set these to false, then nothing on that chart would detect these events. So this is a global setting for the chart. I'll compile that, back to the chart, clear this, insert objects, horizontal line, and now I have chart event object create. The L param and D param tell me nothing about where that object was created. I do have the name. The S param is H4 horizontal line, and then the object drag still with L param, D param, and the name of the object. So there is a difference between the object drag and the object create. As we saw earlier, if I now move this object around on the screen, I'll get another object drag, but I only get object create when it's first inserted. Now just to show something else, I'll insert another object. I'll insert a shape rectangle. Same type of events, chart event object create L param, D param. I wanted to insert that so you could see that I wasn't just getting L param and D param 0 simply because a horizontal line ran all the way across the screen. So this is a rectangle and doesn't run across the screen. But I get the same events, chart event object create and chart event object drag, and then I get the name of the object. Now both of these are highlighted. I can press the delete key and I get chart event object delete, still L param and D param 0, but I get an S param that shows me the name of the object that's been deleted. And of course I get the key down then because I press the delete key to delete those objects. So that's how you get the object creation and object deletion. You have to turn those event handlers on first. I'll go back to the code because there are 2 more events that I also need to turn on before you can see them. Now those 2 events are mouse move and mouse wheel. So I'm just going to turn those on. I'll do a very quick demonstration of mouse move because that will show every time I'm moving the mouse around the screen. So I'm going to demonstrate and then turn it off again. And you can see here I'm getting mouse move just by moving the cursor around the screen. The mouse move has an L param of 167 here and a D param 654, and down here 172. So these are the X and Y coordinates of where the mouse is moving. So you can actually track the mouse around the screen with the mouse move event. The S param here is 0. Now the S param is actually a number that's been sent through as a string, and it is a bitmap showing other keys and mouse buttons that are active at the time of the mouse move. I'll show you how to filter that bitmap and understand what's happening, but I'm going to turn this off first because the same bitmap applies to the mouse wheel, and I want to demonstrate the mouse wheel as well. So I've just set mouse move to false, and I have mouse wheel is still true. Back in the chart, I'll clear this. Mouse move is not detecting anything. Now I'm just going to scroll the wheel here. And I get this chart event mouse wheel, L param, D param, S param. The D param tells me how much the mouse wheel has moved. So I scrolled the wheel backwards there. If I scroll it forwards, I get a 120. My mouse wheel moves in steps. I'm always going to get a 120. I don't think I can move it fast enough to get something else. The L param though shows the X and Y coordinates and any other keys that have been pressed at the same time, such as Control scroll or Shift scroll, or the mouse buttons or the side mouse buttons. So I'll show how you can filter that. Now I've made a modification to my code. I've taken out this original print format showing everything. Now I only want to look at the chart event mouse wheel events. To get the X coordinate of the mouse wheel, the L param, I'm applying this short L param. So the short, that's casting the L param into a short, which means that I'm only going to get the first 16 bits of that number. So the X coordinate will be the 16-bit number that is the beginning of the L param. Y is the next 16 bits. So to get that, I'm still casting to a short to get a 16-bit number, but I'm shifting the L param value 16 bits to the right with this greater than operator. So first I take away the first 16 bits from L param, and then the short statement simply takes the rightmost 16 bits. And the key mapping is the same thing, but now shifted by 32, because I'm taking away the X and the Y. So that's the first 16 for X and the next 16 for Y. Means I'm taking away 32 bits from the L param, and that gives me a key mapping. Now here I've put codes. Let me just insert a blank line there. I've put codes for the key mappings. The left mouse will be a value of 1, and these will be in the keys. The right mouse will be a value of 2, and if you happen to have both the left and the right mouse button pressed, you'll have a value of 3. So it's a bit mapping. Shift is 4, Control key is 8, middle mouse button is 16, and then not everyone has these, but my mouse has 2 extra keys on the side, or 2 extra buttons on the side. They are the X1 and the X2, and they give values of 32 and 64. So depending which of these combinations are pressed, I'll get a value in keys. I'm not going to be using these. That key mapping is just there for reference. What I'm actually doing, I'm setting up a key name string, which has all of these names, left mouse, right mouse, shift, so on. I've declared an array called key names, and I'm splitting that key name string into the key names. And then I'm building up this key pressed string. For int I equals 0 while I is less than 7, there are 7 of these entries, so 0 to 6, I++, it's a standard loop. I've got an int j here, which is equal to 1, left shifted by the number of bits of I. So when I is 0, 1 left shifted 0 is just 1. When I is 1, then a 1 left shifted by 1 is 2. So I'm getting these values by left shifting this j. If keys ampersand j, it's a single ampersand, so I'm not testing if keys and j, I'm doing a bitwise operation, keys and j, if that's not equal to 0. So that means if the bitmap of keys, if there's any bit that matches the bits that are turned on in j, then I simply say keys pressed plus equals, and then the key name from this array. So that will show me which keys have been held down while I scrolled the mouse key. And then I simply say the standard print format event, L param, D param, S param, plus print format, X coordinate, Y coordinate, the key bit mapping, and then the string that is the keys that were pressed. Compile that, clear this. Standard, I'll just scroll the wheel up, scroll the wheel down. You can see that I get the X and the Y coordinates, and the K is 0 here. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and scroll up, and now I get a K value of 4, and it says that I'm holding the Shift. I'll hold Control up, and now I get a K value of 8, and it says that I'm holding Control. If I hold Control and Shift, I'm getting Shift plus Control. If I can manage to hold the left mouse button at the same time as I scroll, I'm getting left mouse. If I can manage to hold the right mouse button, I get the R mouse. If I can just press my X2 key, X2 mouse, and press my X1 key, X1 mouse. So I can detect all of these possible combinations of Control, Shift, left and right mouse button and the middle mouse button. I'm not sure I can do that because that's also my wheel, but let me just hold that. And yes, I get that middle mouse button as well. So I can detect all of these combinations with the chart event mouse wheel. Now to show how that mapping works with the chart event mouse move, I've set the ID equals chart event mouse move here, so I'm only detecting the mouse move events. Instead of an X and Y, because they came through in the L param and D param, I'm setting my keys equal to the string to integer of the S param. So the S param is just the keys component for the mouse move. And I've turned the event mouse move on to true. Compile that, change that. Compile, right. Back here, I'm already getting mouse move events. And as before, I have an X coordinate, 695, a Y coordinate, 738, K equals 0, and so on. If I now hold the control key while I move the mouse, move down here, it becomes very difficult. You just have to look at the last entry in the list. Chart event mouse move, L param 124, D param 665, that's the X and the Y coordinates. And then S param is an 8, K equals 8, and that's the control key. If I hold the shift and move the mouse, I've got an S param of 4, which says that it's a shift. If I hold control and shift, I get an S param of 12, which is shift plus control. So the S param is just a string holding a number, which is the bit mapping of the various keys that are being held while I'm moving the mouse. Now the next event I want to show is the end edit event. I'm going to insert an object, and this is an object of type edit. Just place it here. I can change the properties of this. I can right click on it, go properties. I can change the description to anything that I like. And I'm not getting any events. If I click on this, nothing happens. I can deselect it and then click on it. Nothing is happening. I'm not getting any events there. I've turned off the on-click events, so you're not seeing those. What I'm looking for is the end edit event. Nothing's happening here. So I can't actually detect the event on an object that I've simply placed on screen like this. Let me go back to the code and make a few more changes. So beginning at the top, I've just set up a constant string object name equals edit underscore object. I've added these lines to create the object on screen. First object delete 0, object name, because if it's already there, I'm going to delete it and start again. 0 is the chart number, and 0 is the number of the current chart. So I delete the object first, and then I create the object chart 0, object name, and it's of type obj underscore edit. And the rest of the parameters 0, 0, 0, not needed because I'm going to set properties in the next block of code. If object find 0, object name is greater than or equal to 0, so I'm just making sure it was created. If I'm able to find the object, then I'm just setting some properties. These first group, these are just standard graphical properties: font, distance, size, color, hidden, and a value of the text, which I'm just setting as the time to string. These next two, though, are very important if you want to be able to use this event. Setting objprop underscore selectable to false and objprop underscore read only to false. So selectable to false means that I can't double click and select it and get the little selectable handle. Read only means that I can actually edit the text in there. And then this chart redraw is simply so that it draws that object. If I did everything else without the chart redraw, then I wouldn't see it until the next time there is a tick. Might not be very important, but I'm just calling it chart redraw to make sure that you can see that object on the screen. I've already modified the code here, which I modified before that example recently, so that I'm now detecting the ID of chart event object end edit. And if I detect that, then I'm calling the print format, the usual print format statement. But I'm also saying if the string parameter is the same as the object name, then I'm going to print object get string 0, object name objprop underscore text. So I'm going to print the text value of that object if it is the same as the object name. And now back on the chart, I have the object that's been drawn by the code here with the time in it, and I have the one that I created just by adding an object to the chart. Still clicking this object on the chart, nothing happens. But if I click this one, because I've set those properties correctly, I now can edit the value there. can change that text, press enter, and now I get the chart event object end edit from this object. L param and D param are 0, but I do get the name of the object. So edit underscore object has just had a chart event object end edit. And the new value is orchard. Let me try that again. And now the new value is test. So that's how you can use the end edit, and that can be very useful if you want to put a dialog on the screen, maybe a box where someone can enter the size of an order that they want to be placed, and you can detect the end edit and capture that value into your code. And now there's just one more thing to show, and that's the custom events, which are somewhat different to the other events because these are self-defined. So now I've made some further changes to the code. Still inside this block where I'm saying if ID equals chart event object end edit. So if I get an end edit, I'm going to fire my own custom event after that. Now, there's not a lot of benefit in firing a custom event inside this code for detection inside the same application. I'm just doing it for demonstration. But this event that I fire can be picked up by any other event handler on the same chart. So another indicator or an expert advisor on the same chart can detect these events. I can also send these events to other charts. So just to go through the code I have here. First, I'm creating an ID, the new ID, and that is time current %1000. So I'm just creating a number from 0 to 999 as the ID of my custom event. And then I call event chart custom, which fires the event. I'm passing it to chart 0, which is my current chart, but I could send this event to any other chart. The ID, then the L param, the D param, and the S param, and in my case I'm setting the S param to just the value of that object. So I'm using the same code that I had here. Object get string 0, object name, object prop text. So I'm firing an event that just contains that text. Now I want to catch that event. And here is where I catch it. When the event comes through, I've sent an ID that is a number from 0 to 999. When it's received in OnChartEvent, it will be that number plus chart event underscore custom. So my first test here, if ID is greater than or equal to chart event underscore custom. And I'll mention there's also chart event underscore custom underscore last, which is the maximum value for a custom event. I'm not bothering to test that, but to make this more accurate, I probably should have and ID is less than or equal to chart event underscore custom underscore last. But if ID is greater than or equal to chart event custom, then it means I have a custom event that I've received. I'm going to print format custom event %I because I can't use the enum to string here because this is not a standard enum. This is a number past the custom chart event. So I'm just printing the integer value of the event, then the L param, D param that have been passed, and the S param. But where I'm printing this integer, I'm printing ID minus chart event underscore custom. I think what I'll also do here, I will just print the actual new ID that I'm firing so that you can see that I'm raising the same event that I'm receiving. See if I can compile that. So I click in here, I will edit that. And now I have the chart event object end edit. And that's the name of the object. The new value orchard, I'm raising event 888 and I've received custom event 888 and the S param here is orchard. Let me do that again. And now I'm raising event 908 because I've got a different time current and I'm receiving custom event 908, L param, D param, and S param. And so that's all I have on the OnChart event. The key things to remember, there are certain events that will not be picked up unless you set this chart set integer. If you want to use the end edit, then you need to make sure that your object has these properties set, object selectable and object read only. And for raising custom events, the ID that you pass when it's received in the OnChart event will be that ID plus chart event underscore custom. And also remember, the event you raise will be picked up by everything running on the chart, not just your indicator or expert advisor, and you can send events to other charts. And if you set these properties with the chart set integer, they will apply to every indicator or expert running on the chart. If this is useful to you, please click the like button. That will help us a lot. And if you want to see more of our videos, then click subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching.